Wait,
Ladies and gentlemen,
wait.
we are live. Harry did not expect me to hit the go live button like that, and I wanted to have some fun. So this is my brother Harry over here, and we have been going and just planning to go live and do stuff. But we've been texting about mental health and the spirituality behind mental health and how people don't even really connect with that. And he said, let's go live right now. Let's talk. Let's get it out there. Let's just start talking to people. And I even said, look, I haven't gone live in a while. I'm fearful of going live. I don't want to get the reactions that might irritated people. And then he's like, forget them. We need to go live. We need to talk. I'm like, I start giving him more excuses. But we wanted to come on here and really talk about mental health. And we really wanted to talk about the fact that there's so many stereotypes behind spirituality and mental health and how we can actually connect those to build a better future for ourselves. And just you choose what your actual way you want to do things are, because there's a lot of opinions out there and we're just giving you two of our own. Two bald guys ready to talk to you guys and have a great time. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of my spiritual gurus, one of my good buddies, and one of my favorite people on the face of this earth. It's Reverend Mr. Harry Turner. It's just Harry Turner. I call him Rev. But we're going live to talk about this. Rev, talk to everybody. Tell them a little bit about your background and like why this was something on your heart to go live right away.
I'm the CEO of the School of Outliers. That's one of the titles. Is there an echo?
That's my dog. That's my dog.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry about that. They just started wrestling right when we went live. Sorry about that.
Oh my goodness. I thought I hear it. I think I hear echo. But anyway, hopefully there's no echo there. But I'm CEO of School of Outliers. And I've been Brandon, he pops up in my mind, often about like collaborating. And we always try to get things in the right way at the right time. But recently I've had a different experience with my subjective experience. And it's come at some hard times. And I'm grateful for those challenging times because I knew that something was being refined in me. With that being said, I just want to talk. I just want to talk about the fact that we talk about things that we think that we know, but we never know. And so we think, but we don't know. And we're addicted to thinking and wanting to know, but in a perpetual state of never knowing. And so in the merger, as I'm thinking about this, I'm also thinking about my different levels of these different levels of awareness that we come to, because just like the earth, there's layers. As you dig more and more, you go through deeper and deeper layers. And at some point, we all reach the same center. So one of my practices, I'm totally not even worried about it. I'm not a distraction. I see it, but I just want you to know it's not a distraction at all for me.
Do you see the dog, the cat jumping in the wind and behind me and all of this? The dogs were sound asleep when we started, just so you know. Like, sound asleep. We go live, and they're both like, let's wrestle! I'm like, oh, shit.
But for me, it's adding to it's just another sound. It could be music for all I care, But so, as I was thinking about this, also, I rely on my faith to truly understand like truth, because we think, but we have no idea. And so one of the conundrums that we exist in is that we exist in a state of not knowing that we are in a perpetual state of projection of our inner worlds. Like all of this subjective experience, there's physical sensations that we are using to experience the world and experience the world. But that interpretation that we make, the mind, because it has to make a decision on something, it calls it the truth. Mm-hmm. And that interpretation is conditioned by our primary conditioning, the way that we grew up. So the ego, our mind, or what I will call the ego, but our mind, it is conditioned to adapt to things. Now that's an amazing thing. That's why we are top dogs. That's why we're higher sentient beings. But with every day, there's a night, at least the way that the mind experiences reality. The dark side of that is that we fool ourselves and adapting to certain conditions and calling it truth. So if I adapted in a condition, if I grew up in a dysregulated environment, then my conditioning will adapt to a dysregulated environment, and then we will call what we know to be true for our reality truth. So let me back it up. Carl Jung says the pendulum of the mind does not oscillate between right and wrong, but sense and nonsense. So based off of our conditioning, which also includes beliefs and attitudes, things make sense according to one particular conditioning environment. And then we say that that's right. And then we fight for our version of rightness, which is really us speaking from a self-centered place, because the ego itself is narcissistic by nature. It is self-centered by nature, which is why we can even have this projection of what we think self to be. But we think, but we never know. What you got?
Tag me in. All right. So recently, I'm someone who everybody thinks Brandon's this extroverted person. He goes out, he parties, he knows everybody, he knows places, he goes out to eat, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, that's not me. I'm at home. I love my private time. I love to be quiet. I like to know what's in the know and what's going on. But the thing is, I've realized going out in public, like, we have to remember, no matter where you go, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, when you go out, there's a spiritual war also going on out there. And if you're not protected, you're not going out with the right mindset. Now, what I mean by that is, I look at, let's use different versions of religion. Let's use Christianity for right now. They talk about having the body armor of God, okay? Well, it starts with having the helmet of salvation. That means you know inside yourself who you are, what you are, and you are from a higher being. That you are one of a very small percentage chance of being here, and you got that opportunity. You were the first sperm to make it through, if that's what you want to go with, to you were the last the cell that's being created that made you become you and made the heart beat. But the thing is, you are made of a God particle, and that's what you are connected to. So start with knowing that, and then work your way through. Now, how I say that is, when we picture the armor of God, we usually picture like a dude with a sword that's just buff, and he's got 200 pounds of armor on him, and he can't walk very fast, because that's what we've been ingrained to have put in our thoughts, put in our mind. But here's the thing. It's more than that. I went out in public, and I go out to these events, and I go do the things I do. I literally go out, and I'm prepared. I go out, and I have a hat on. The hat is my helmet. It makes me know I'm surviving. I'm covering my head from things going on. I have a necklace that I put on, and I'm not wearing it right now, and I thought I was, that goes around and covers my chest to guard my heart and guard my chakras here. I literally wear shirts that are loose like this that can pull down. Why? So that way I'm covered all the way down my arm, where I have a bracelet and I have a ring. So now I've got all of my top covered, and you can't hit me with spiritual demons. And I then go all the way down through me into peace, because you're supposed to have the shoes of peace. So I want to make sure the shoes that I'm wearing, my feet don't hurt, and I'm able to walk away from any situation I don't need peacefully, without the fear of anger, emotions coming overpower me, or letting other people's opinions dictate who I am. So for me, I have to go out and guard myself, and that's how I go out, with a spiritual protection of bracelets, shirts, to what my pants are and my shoes are. So I know I'm going out feeling peaceful, positive, and knowing God has my back, without the spiritualness attacking me. Sorry, I just felt like that had to come out.
Whatever flows, flows. So we think, but we never know. Imagine that. God creating a creation that was brilliant at thinking, and can think things, and can imagine things, and then create things from the things that it thinks and imagines. And it always yearns to know, but it thinks. Thinking is a function of the mind. Perceiving, sensing, judging. Like, thinking is a function of the mind, or a process. but we never know. We have to make an interpretation based off of what is at best a hypothesis, and that's only if you're educated in the matter. So then education becomes essential. Education of self, know thyself. And so before you go out, you have to go in, because in is the only place that's truly real. And when you go in, then you can truly see what you're seeing from without, because we walk and we see, but we're not truly seeing. We can only see if we look within. When we see within, we can also see the algorithms, the programs that other people are operating on based off of their ego from without. And then that becomes that helmet, because there's these perceptions that people judge, that they throw out here, such as judgment. I speak on judgment and condemnation a lot. I had a question today on wisdom. I forget the name of the exact question. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Oh, here we go.
Go ahead, you run with it.
It says, what don't you apologize for, but probably should? And I love that question. I'm so grateful for it.
So
Because go ahead.
go. No, I want to hear where you're going to go, because I have a quote I'm going to write down. I'm going to go with you on. Go with it.
First, the question itself is, it represents, again, the ego is narcissistic by nature. It is self-centered. It has to be. God made a design. It needed to have a sense of self, even though it never really truly knows self. But at the same time, needed to be saved from this illusion of self. So in this illusion, in this conundrum of a conundrum that we live within, we have this thing called the mind, and it thinks, but it never knows. And so when I hear the question, what don't you apologize for, but probably should, as a mental health clinician, even though I'm not giving any therapeutic advice here, as a mental health clinician, I already know that should itself is a cognitive distortion. So let's just start with the intellectual before we get to the spiritual. Should itself is a cognitive distortion. It's making a presumption of something as if it knows. So we're coming from the stance of already knowing this. And this represents the pride of the ego. And then pride comes in, a fall comes after pride, because the moment that we think that we know, that's when we get out. That's when pain comes in to make us aware. We think we don't know. And when we confuse the thinking with the knowing, pain is there to humble the ego back into knowing that it does not know, so that it can receive something to actually go on.
So I read this quote the other day, and I can't remember what book it was in, because I'm reading 3 different books. But he literally says, I would rather have questions that need to be answered than answers that are not allowed to be questioned. And I thought of some of our discussions we've had through race to political situations. You and I have nothing we don't have on the table. So that's why mental health is able to be a question that we can have and have a different of opinion on it sometimes and still respect each other. And I think that's the thing that needs to be brought out more for more people is we're so demanding of wanting answers from areas. We're so demanding of thinking our opinion is right that we're not realizing that there's questions that others may have that we have to be willing to answer. And if we don't have questions, we're just accepting. And I think that's where, for me, with all of this is, if somebody's getting under your skin and you could tell they're triggering your anxiety, your anger, your depression, your whatever, guess what? There's a reason that's coming at you. And I need you to take a step and look deep down inside yourself and say, am I asking the right questions to get myself through this? Am I setting the right boundaries? And am I able to get myself out of it? And if they don't respect any of those areas, get the fuck away from them. That's a spiritual mentioning for you.
So he thinks. But we never know.
We never know.
We never know. And so even these concepts that we play with, right now there's an appeal towards a lot of people going and visit monasteries. And a lot of Americans now are beginning to really admire, even younger folk are beginning to admire the Eastern philosophies and religions and cultures. And that's because there is no affiliation with that, with their humanity. There's this pull, you see, again, perception is a projection. And so for idols, I feel for our idols. That's why I say never praise me, because that ensures that you will condemn me.
Yeah.
Praise is a condemnation, because all idols got to fall. And so what we do is we create these idols because we need to cast our light onto other people, because we believe it to be too bright for us. And then we demonize and create criminals because we don't want to deal with our shadows either, because those are too dark for us. We're always in this perpetual state of running from self, or who we think self to be. But wherever you go, there you are. And so we continue to project. And so the more sure we are, that moment of sureness, when we are triggered, that represents in that moment itself, at least my new current awareness, based off of what I've been thinking and concluding, that moment of righteous indignation represents pride. We are never more sure of ourselves than when we believe ourselves to have been trespassed against. And it's in that moment that we feel possessed almost to react. We impulsively react based off of solely primitive instincts, solely relegated to what we think. And it's in that space of ignorance, where we don't have access to spirit, that we actually do evil, because evil represents, or to sin is to operate within a space of thinking that you know something. Confusing what you think with what you know, true knowingness. And true knowingness doesn't come from the mind. The mind continues to predict, which is called foresight. And it's horrible at foresight. But life is paradox. Everything is backwards. So the mind was placed in the head, and it believes that it should be the head, but really what it should have been was the ass, because that's why hindsight is 20/20. It sees backwards, not forward.
Amen. I mean, it does. But at the same point, you have to remember who you are. And that means looking forward. That's why you have to be in the presence. Because when you drive a car, you only get 3 spots to look back. That's because you don't need to be looking where you came from. You need to be looking where you're going. So I got to jump on this really quick. Maritza is saying things like, she said she had a bad day. She turned it on, and look what came up. This came up, so she turned it in. Thank you. We love that. We appreciate that. But then she throws this out there saying, I want to learn how to meditate and find my true self. Let me throw this out there for us, okay? This is mental health conversations. This is you and I wanting to come out here and talk. I think these are things that people need to hear more about. Look, when you hear the word meditate, you hear the word pray, you hear the word alone time, all of that is the same concept. It's about taking a moment to truly stop everything. It's not picking up the phone. It's not picking up the computer. It's not Netflix and chill. It is 100% stopping everything. Because I want you to see one thing that a lot of people don't know. All gods had a moment of silence for themselves. Jesus, before he had that realization he needed to go beyond the cross for Christianity, he literally had to go be alone and meditate. Meditate is not the word they use. It just was be alone. So you need to step back and be alone to be able to let go, to find your true self. Because the people that are meant to go, you're not going to think of the same ones that are the ones that stay through. Because this world is a lot of demons, has a lot of mental health people that don't even realize that they are just anchors bringing you down. And you need to be able to learn how to know when you separate those by being alone and seeing who actually shows up with the light to keep you going.
That helmet that you said earlier.
Run it.
Yes. Understanding consciousness. If you want to transcend as quickly as possible, to study consciousness. If you understand the human consciousness, you'll begin to detect what can't be detected, which is this projection. And so all of us, based off of our current state of beingness energetically, we perceive things at different levels. And so I can look at the same thing and see something completely separate from the other person based off of our current state of beingness. And that's why that going in is so important. My conditioning. So this question, why don't you apologize but what don't you apologize for, but probably should? I grew up in an environment where I apologized for merely existing and thought my mere existence was a curse. And so we have no issue with taking on shame and blame, at least according to my conditioning. But this conditioning that we all have to go through is our cross to bear. We all
Yes.
have our cross to bear. And so this is part of the cross. Because of conditioning, I will filter my interpretation of things if I am unhealed through that lens. So even there were situations when I was my most unaware, when I was younger, there were situations where I knew I wasn't in the quote unquote wrong. But because the other person's conditioning was that of being in a narcissistic environment where their parents may have projected stuff onto them, they projected their feelings of wrongness onto me. And me being conditioned to internalize hatred, it didn't matter whether it was true or not.
Mm.
I'm wrong. And so I go into apologetic state. This is the cross and the illusion that one must escape.
Can
That's
I play
part of
with
the.
you?
Go ahead.
What is truth?
That's it. Now we ask. Now, go ahead. You have any more, or you was that a
Oh no,
question?
no. That's a question. I want everybody to. We've had people tuning in, like, and we've had conversations going on the side over here about mental health and people saying it's divine and all this stuff. It's great, but the thing is, what is truth? Truth is your opinion, my opinion, and then what went on. And the thing is,
All of that's illusion.
but that's the thing.
Go ahead.
All of that's illusion. But the thing is, that's what we have to be able to understand is when you can see through the illusion to what's going on and know that your truth is you. Your truth is your fire. Your truth, like Stovetop Yum Yum. I know her truth is her cooking, and she loves to be helping people understand why they like to cook and they like to eat. Where Sherry is divine with her Reiki. I know these people like this. I know these people who understand that it's knowing what your divine is and standing in your truth, standing in peace. Go.
You have to ask yourself first, how much access to truth do I have? Because the mind is in a perpetual state of the absence of truth. It lives in a perpetual state of projection that it cannot detect. And so first, how much access do I have to truth? This is why we meditate. This is why we go in first. So how much access to truth? And then that question of what is truth, you learn it more and more as you go on, but it's more of an experience, a proximity of understanding that everything is true. Like everyone is living out their truth based off of their level of consciousness, their energetic frequency. And so on the lower levels of energetic frequency, we fall more into the narcissistic melodrama of needing us to put ourselves in a position of hero and everything that is opposite us in a position of demon that's worthy, and we rationalize these attacks that we have on one another. And you can see that in social media, the way that we tear each other down. That's why someone operating from the ego can look at a scripture and send a person clean away from the church, whereas a person who has access to truth can see the same scripture and then speak from truth and then bring people towards. How close are you in proximity to love really is the question, because truth does not exist outside of love. So all of these judgments that we make, that is mental, that is mentations, that is just mental thoughts. That is just the mind projecting out its own conditioning, what it thinks it's experiencing. But what is outside of love? So it's whether the person that has caused you harm was in the presence in that moment. If you perceive a harm to be done, know that the thing that harmed you is the same thing that you use to harm other people, because it's the ego. It is the ego, and the programming of the ego is the same for all human beings, which is why it said, how are you going to point out the splinter in your neighbor's eye when you have a plank hanging out of yours? But we ignore that because the ego is narcissistic. So again, it prompts itself up as hero, and everybody and anything opposite it, or it deems as a threat, or says that its truth is not reality, as villain. There are no heroes and no villains. There are none.
All right, you ready?
Go ahead.
Final thoughts. I got 1 minute, and then I got to sign off and get to my meeting. Wait, you knew I said 5:15. I'm going to be pushing it. So, final thoughts. Do you want to go first? Or you want to go second?
Go. You go. You go.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I gave you my warning. Don't make me feel guilty like that. All right. Final thought. Put the proper boundaries out there. Know where your boundaries are, and be able to know what you can do. And if you speak that, do not be afraid of the repercussions that come your way, because you stood on truth, you stood on love, and you stood on faith. And if the person in response loves you that way, you'll be able to know, and you'll move forwards. All right, you're up, bro.
All I can, to the extent of my human capacity, when I use any human faculty such as speech, is tell you what I think, but do not know. I appreciate y'all's time.
I don't know what button to hit. Hold on. I'll do this one.
Bam. Booyah.